Igor, an 8-year-old boy, was playing with his friends on a soccer field. He ran faster than everyone and was a happy child. However, when he received the ball, his friend kicked it too hard, and the ball hit Igor's head. The boy fell dizzy on the soccer field. All his friends were worried because Igor didn't seem well. "Igor, are you okay?" asked Pedro, one of his best friends, with wide eyes full of concern. "He's not responding," shouted Lucas, running to get an adult. Soon, an adult passing by was called and quickly took Igor to the hospital. On the way, Igor looked out the car window, and everything seemed blurry. "Mom." "Dad," murmured Igor weakly, trying to focus his sight on the hospital. His parents arrived and were deeply worried about him. Igor was still seeing everything blurry. "What happened to my son?" Igor's mother asked the doctor, almost in tears. "We're going to do some tests, ma'am. We need to understand what's causing this blurry vision," the doctor replied, trying to calm her. After several tests, the doctors found something alarming. The hit from the ball hadn't caused the vision loss, it had only revealed that Igor had a brain tumor. This tumor was pressing on the optic nerve, causing partial vision loss. "Doctor, what does this mean?" Igor's father asked, his face pale with worry. "The tumor is benign, but it's in a very difficult area to operate on. The chances of Igor not surviving the surgery are high," the doctor explained with a serious look. Igor's parents were devastated. They had to decide whether to risk the surgery so their son could regain his vision or let Igor gradually lose his sight but ensure he would stay alive. "We can't risk losing our son, but we also don't want him to suffer," Igor's mother said, holding her husband's hand. "We need to talk to Igor. He deserves to know what's happening and help us decide," Igor's father suggested. The parents explained the situation to Igor with all the care in the world. "Igor, what do you think? Do you want to try the surgery or prefer to avoid the risk and gradually lose your vision?" his father asked, his voice trembling. "I want to live," Igor replied, tears in his eyes, while holding his parents' hands. Thus, the parents opted not to do the surgery. Over time, Igor gradually lost his vision until he was completely blind. However, he never lost his cheerful spirit and desire to live. "Mom and Dad, I can still play, just in different ways," Igor said one day, smiling as he explored the world with his other senses. Despite the difficulties, Igor adapted to his new life and showed incredible resilience, inspiring everyone around him with his strength and determination. The boy spent years adapting to his new lifestyle. His parents hired a Braille teacher who taught him to read books. Additionally, they were instructed by specialists on how to raise their son so that, in the future, he could be an independent man despite his blindness. Years passed, and Igor adapted to his new world. Now, he was a 28-year-old man. Igor worked at a company and had several colleagues, including some who shared the same disability as him. His best friend was Fabio, who was also blind. Fabio had been blind from birth and had an optimistic view of life. "You know, Igor, what I like most about life is that, despite everything, there's always something new to learn," Fabio said one day during a break at work. "I agree, Fabio. Life always surprises us," Igor replied, smiling. From the office, Igor went straight home to meet his wife, Claudia. At home, Igor hugged and kissed his wife. "How was your day, my love?" Claudia asked, caressing Igor's face. "It was good. Fabio and I worked on a new project. And you, how are you?" Igor asked, feeling the comfort of Claudia's embrace. "Everything is great. Clara was excited today. She wants to show you a new dance she learned at school," Claudia replied, laughing. The couple got married a few years ago. Claudia was a wonderful wife and loved Igor. She helped Igor whenever she could to make his life easier, but she also treated him normally. She didn't see Igor's condition as something that made him less capable. On the contrary, Claudia said that Igor was one of the most intelligent and capable people she knew. After hugging his wife, he went straight to his daughter Clara's room, where she was playing with a doll. "Daddy!" Clara exclaimed, running to hug Igor. "Do you want to see my new dance?" "Of course, Clara." "Show me your dance," Igor said, smiling as he sat on the bed to listen to his daughter's steps. His daughter was 5 years old. Igor had a happy and simple life. He never desired many material objects or wealth. After taking a shower, he returned to his wife and told her that there would be a party at the company and invited her to go with him. "Claudia, there will be a party at the company. I would like you to go with me," Igor said, while drying his hair. "Of course, my love. I will definitely go with you," Claudia replied, kissing him gently. Igor's life was full of love and happiness. He had overcome many challenges and built a wonderful family. The company party would be another moment to celebrate life alongside his beloved wife. The next evening, Igor and Claudia got ready for the party. Claudia admired Igor, who was wearing a blue dress shirt and black pants, with a smile. "Igor, you look handsome," Claudia said, adjusting his shirt collar. Igor ran his hand over Claudia's face, feeling her soft features, and then touched her dress, feeling the soft and elegant fabric. "You look beautiful too, Claudia," Igor replied with a smile. Claudia smiled, feeling lucky to have married someone like Igor. Many times, she considered herself outside the standards of beauty and in her most intimate thoughts, wondered if Igor would have chosen her if he could see her. The two went to the party with Claudia driving the car. At the party, they first met Fabio. Fabio greeted Igor with a hug and then turned to Claudia. "How are you?" "It's a pleasure to see you," Fabio said, smiling warmly. "I'm good, Fabio, and you?" Claudia replied, returning the smile. Claudia was already friends with Fabio before meeting Igor. It was Fabio who introduced the two many years ago. After chatting a bit with Fabio, Igor and Claudia mingled with the other guests while Igor only listened to the cheerful and lively music filling the room. At one point, Igor sat in a chair, and Claudia said she was going to get some drinks. "I'll get something for us, dear." "I'll be right back," Claudia said, kissing his forehead. Igor remained seated, listening to the sounds around him. His hearing was extremely sharp, and he could hear conversations that people thought he couldn't hear. Right behind him, two colleagues started talking, and he heard every word clearly. "Did you see Igor's wife?" one of them said with a tone of disdain. "Yes, she's really ugly." "How lucky she was to marry such a handsome man like him," the other responded, laughing. Igor felt a wave of irritation rising inside him. For him, external beauty didn't matter, but talking bad about his wife made him furious. He clenched his fists, trying to stay calm, but his mind was boiling. "Look, here she comes." "Be quiet," said one of the women as she noticed Claudia approaching. Claudia returned with the drinks, smiling. "Here you go, Igor." "I brought your favorite soda," she said, handing the cup to Igor. Igor took the cup and held Claudia's hand for a moment, looking at her affectionately. "Thank you, my love," Igor said softly, his voice still laden with emotion. Claudia sensed that something was wrong. "Is everything okay, Igor?" "You seem worried," she asked, sitting next to him. Igor took a deep breath, trying to calm himself. "Everything is fine now that you're here, Claudia," he replied. Then, they enjoyed the party and each other's company. To Igor, Claudia's beauty lay in her kindness, love, and the unconditional support she gave him every day. And that was something no one could take away from them. One day, Igor woke up and noticed something different. Opening his eyes slowly, he realized he could see some shapes and forms around him. Although his vision was still blurry, it was more than he had experienced in decades. "Claudia!" Igor called out, his voice trembling with emotion. Claudia rushed to his side, worried. "What is it, Igor? Are you okay?" she asked, holding his hand. "I think I'm seeing something," Igor responded, his eyes wide. Claudia looked at him, incredulous. "Really? Are you really seeing?" she said, her voice filled with hope. Igor and Claudia decided to go to the doctor immediately. In the office, Dr. Almeida received them and conducted a series of tests. "This is incredible, Igor," Dr. Almeida said with a wide smile. "It seems the tumor in your head is shrinking, and that's why it's no longer pressing on the optic nerve like before. It's a real miracle." Igor and Claudia looked at each other, emotional. Igor's vision improved more and more, and he was excited, discovering a visual world that had long been denied to him. One morning, while looking in the bathroom mirror, Igor saw his own reflection clearly for the first time in years. He was a handsome man, with strong features and a gentle look. He felt a mix of emotions seeing himself like this.
Claudia, come ieri.
Igor called with a smile. Claudia entered the bathroom, feeling insecure about her appearance. Igor turned to her and for the first time, looked directly at his wife. "You're so beautiful, Claudia," Igor said with a smile. Claudia blushed, feeling uncomfortable. She knew she was overweight and didn't take much care of her appearance, but she always believed Igor's love would transcend those issues. However, now that he could see her, old fears resurfaced. "You don't have to say that just to please me, Igor," Claudia responded, looking away. "I know how I am." Igor noticed the insecurity in her voice and stepped forward, holding her hands. "Claudia, I truly think you're beautiful. And more importantly, you're the woman who stood by me, who gave me unconditional support and love. That matters to me," Igor said, trying to cheer her up. But Claudia just shook her head, trying to hold back tears. "It's just hard to believe. I always thought you loved me only because you couldn't see me. Now that you can, I don't know what to think," she said, her voice choked. Igor hugged Claudia tightly, trying to convey all the love and security he felt. "Nothing has changed, Claudia. You're the same wonderful woman you've always been. My vision may have returned, but my love for you was never based solely on appearance," he said firmly. Claudia smiled, still a bit insecure but feeling the weight of Igor's words. Despite what he said, a small doubt lingered in the air, an uncertainty Claudia couldn't completely dispel. Over time, she began to believe him more, and together they faced this new phase of their lives, learning to value even more the love and partnership that united them. However, Igor, while continuing to discover his new visual world, kept an indecipherable expression, leaving in suspense whether his words fully reflected his true feelings. As the months passed, Igor's life changed drastically. Now that he could see, he became a vain man and started going to the gym regularly. He took great care of his body, striving to stay in shape and improve his appearance. Claudia noticed that Igor was becoming more distant but couldn't understand why. She missed the attention and affection he always gave her. Worried, she decided to talk to Fabio, Igor's longtime friend. "Fabio, I'm worried about Igor. He seems different, more distant. Do you know what might be happening?" Claudia asked with an anguished expression. Fabio, always attentive, tried to reassure her. "Claudia, maybe it's just a new phase for him. His vision coming back is a huge change. Give him some time to adjust. He still loves you, I'm sure," Fabio said, trying to comfort her. Meanwhile, Igor couldn't stop looking at himself in the mirror. He found himself very handsome and was attracted to his own image. He spent long minutes admiring himself, adjusting his hair, and observing every detail of his face and body. Walking down the street, he noticed the glances of women on him, which further fueled his vanity. At work, Igor also began to notice admiring looks, especially from Larissa, the company manager. She always found an excuse to talk to Igor, whether to discuss projects or simply to chat. "Igor, you're doing very well on these new projects. I'm sure your future here is promising," Larissa said with an enchanting smile. Igor felt flattered by the attention and couldn't deny that he liked it. At home, he spent more time playing with Clara. Now that he could see, he could engage more in the games and delight in seeing his daughter's excited face. "Papa, let's play hide and seek," Clara exclaimed, running around the yard. However, Claudia felt increasingly neglected. Igor seemed to devote all his energy to the gym, work, and playing with Clara. He had stopped kissing her and showing the affection that had once been so natural. One night, after putting Clara to bed, Claudia tried to talk to Igor. "Igor, I feel like we're drifting apart. You barely spend any time with me anymore." "What's going on?" she asked, her voice trembling. Igor looked at her, but his words were evasive. "I'm just focused on adapting to this new life, Claudia." "It's all very new to me," he replied, not really addressing how Claudia felt. Claudia felt lost, unsure of what to do to reconnect with her husband. She wondered if Igor's recovery of vision had brought not only a new visual world, but also a new perspective that was slowly pushing her away. Meanwhile, Igor continued to be enamored with the attention he received, not realizing the price this vanity was exacting on his relationship. With his increased self-esteem and dedication to work, Igor was promoted at the company. The news of his promotion spread quickly, and Fabio, his best friend, was one of the first to celebrate. "Congratulations, Igor. I knew you could do it," Fabio said, trying to hug his friend. However, absorbed in his new reality, Igor barely looked at Fabio. "Thanks, Fabio," Igor replied distantly. Fabio, sensing the perfume of Larissa in the air, felt out of place when he noticed it was she who was hugging Igor warmly. "Congratulations, Igor. You deserve this and much more," Larissa said with a suggestive smile. Later, Fabio sought to express his concern to Claudia. "Claudia, I felt something different about Igor today. It seems like he's blind to his old friendships. He barely spoke to me and was with Larissa," Fabio said sadly. Claudia sighed deeply. "Clara misses her dad so much. He rarely visits her now," Claudia said with sadness in her voice, while stroking her daughter's hair. Fabio, always kind, tried to comfort Clara. "Sweetie, do you want to play hide and seek?" he asked, trying to cheer her up. "It's not the same, Uncle Fabio." "You can't see like Daddy," Clara replied with a sad voice. Fabio smiled gently. "Let's give it a try, Clara." "I'm sure I can find you," he said confidently. Clara, hesitant at first, decided to give it a chance. She hid, and quickly, Fabio found her using his keen sense of hearing. "How did you find me if you're blind?" Clara asked, laughing. "I hear very well, Clara. And you make a lovely noise when you try to hide," Fabio replied, also laughing. They spent the afternoon playing, with Clara's laughter echoing through the house. Claudia watched, feeling a joy she hadn't felt in a long time. Fabio's presence brought a lightness to her home, a sense that everything would be okay despite Igor's absence. Meanwhile, Igor continued to indulge in a world of fleeting pleasures. His house was a gathering place for many women, and he enjoyed his new, carefree life. But even with all the attention and freedom he had longed for, there were moments when Clara's image and her happy laughter crossed his mind, leaving a void that parties and temporary achievements couldn't fill. Igor's transformation continued to distance him from his old life, but Claudia and Fabio, with their new routines, found ways to fill the void he had left. The friendship between Fabio and Clara grew stronger, creating new bonds of affection and joy, while Igor, in his quest for the fleeting beauty he saw with his eyes, failed to realize that the truest beauty was in the heart he had left behind. Years went by, and Igor still lived the same life of excess and superficiality. Despite being constantly surrounded by women and parties, he began to feel the weight of the emptiness his life had become. The longing for his daughter Clara resurfaced more frequently. He hadn't seen her in at least a year, and these thoughts haunted him. However, whenever a new woman appeared, he would distract himself and quickly forget the past. One day, Igor received devastating news. The company where he worked decided to fire him for cause. He had accumulated numerous absences, appeared drunk at work, and persistently hit on his female colleagues. Without a job, Larissa and the other women he dated lost interest in him. Financial difficulties began to arise, and Igor found himself with no options. Desperate, he sought help from Larissa, but she was blunt. I'm not going to support a lazy man, Igor. Get your life together, she said with no sympathy. Not knowing where to turn, Igor decided to reach out to Claudia and Clara, hoping to find some support. When he knocked on the door, he was in for a big surprise. Clara, now a 15-year-old teenager, answered. His daughter was now his height, and he realized how much time had passed without him noticing. Hi Clara, Igor said hesitantly. Clara recognized him immediately and responded coldly. What do you want? The way she addressed him surprised him. He had expected to be called Dad, but she treated him like a stranger. Before he could say anything, Claudia appeared at the door, and beside her was Fabio. Igor felt a surge of anger seeing them together. What's going on here? Igor asked, trying to control his rage. Claudia, you're a traitor. And you, Fabio, I trusted you. With a look of fury, Claudia shouted back. A traitor? You have the nerve to call me a traitor, Igor? You spent years without visiting your daughter. Clara cried for you while you bounced from bed to bed. And who was there for her all this time? Fabio. He's been a father figure all these years, and that's why she calls him Dad. Igor, overwhelmed with anger and regret, looked at Clara, who was now watching the scene from a distance with an indifferent look. I just wanted to see my daughter, Igor said, his voice choked with emotion. Your daughter? Claudia retorted with tears in her eyes. You don't have the right to call her that, not after everything you've done. Leave, Igor. Rebuild your life far from here. Fabio approached Claudia, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. Let's go, Claudia. Let him go, Fabio said in a calm tone. Igor, realizing he had lost everything that truly mattered, turned and walked away with the weight of loneliness and regret crushing his heart. He walked slowly, tears streaming down his face, realizing that the choices he made had driven him away from what was truly important in life. Now, without a job, without Larissa, and without the family that once loved him, Igor would have to face the consequences of his actions and find a way to rebuild his life, knowing he might never regain what he had lost. For a few months, Igor tried to contact his daughter Clara, but she refused to talk to him. Calls and messages were ignored, and Igor felt the weight of his past actions. Desperate for a chance at redemption, he continued to try. One day, Fabio and Claudia decided to talk to Clara about the situation. They sat with her in the living room, trying to approach the topic with care. Clara, we know Igor has done many wrong things, Fabio began gently, but he is your father. Maybe you should give him a chance. Clara looked at them, her eyes filled with a mix of pain and confusion. I don't know if I can, Fabio. He left us, and it's been you who's been there for me all this time, Clara replied, her voice trembling. I understand, dear, but sometimes people change and deserve a second chance. Think about it, Claudia said, holding her daughter's hand. Clara sighed, nodding slowly. I'll think about it, she said. Meanwhile, Igor was sleeping soundly in his small apartment. When he woke up, he noticed his vision was a bit blurry. A familiar fear gripped him, reminding him of when he lost his sight years ago. Concerned, he got in his car and drove to the hospital, where he underwent a series of tests. The doctor came with the news Igor dreaded. Igor, another tumor is growing. It might be related to the excesses of parties and alcohol, the doctor explained, with a serious expression. Igor returned to his car and began to cry, feeling crushed by the weight of his choices. In the midst of his despair, he received a call. It was Clara. Dad, I'd like to go out with you. Give me a chance. Igor felt a wave of relief and hope. They went out for a walk and talked a lot, but Igor noticed that the emotional distance between them was palpable. Clara was no longer as close to him, which made him deeply sad. After they said goodbye, Igor returned home, and his vision began to deteriorate significantly. He knew he would soon be blind again. Despite this, he continued driving, refusing to accept the loss of his independence. One day, he needed to pick Clara up from the mall. While he waited, he received a call from Larissa. "Igor, I miss you. Can we meet?" Larissa said, her voice sweet but with a hint of manipulation. Igor found it strange, but the memory of his times with Larissa and his vanity made him accept the invitation. He drove to her house, completely forgetting to pick up his daughter. Clara had been waiting for Igor for hours, growing increasingly worried and frustrated. She tried calling him, but her phone had died. The mall had already closed, and she found herself without money or a way to communicate. Desperate and with no options, Clara decided to walk home, a distance of about 3 kilometers. The night was dark and cold, and she walked with apprehension, looking back occasionally, fearing any threat. Meanwhile, Igor was in Larissa's bed, engaged in a romantic conversation. Larissa, with a seductive tone, revealed some news she had discovered. "Igor, did you know you have a severance payment from the company?" Igor, surprised, looked at her with suspicion. "I didn't know about that. How much is it?" he asked, feeling a mix of curiosity and suspicion. Larissa revealed the amount, which was extremely high. Igor nearly fell off the bed, shocked by the sum. He immediately realized Larissa's true motive: she was interested in the money. Without saying anything more, Igor got out of bed, quickly dressed, and left her house. He no longer wanted to be close to people like Larissa, who were only interested in his money. Then he remembered Clara and felt a wave of panic. Igor sped to the mall, but it was too late. The mall had been closed for a long time. Desperate, he tried calling Clara and Claudia, but neither answered. Feeling guilty, he drove to Claudia's house. When he arrived, Claudia greeted him with a slap to the face. Igor was stunned, not understanding the reason for the attack. Looking at Clara, he saw that she was hurt, with scratches all over her body. "Claudia, what happened?" Igor asked, his voice filled with concern. "Clara walked home because you abandoned her at the mall. She was mugged on the way, tried to fight back, and the thief hurt her. The only lucky thing was that the police showed up," Claudia shouted, with anger in her eyes. Igor felt a lump in his throat, unable to find words. He looked at Clara, who was watching him with a mix of pain and disappointment. Without saying a word, she went into her room and closed the door. Igor, feeling more desolate than ever, turned to Claudia. "I'm so sorry, Claudia." "I don't know what to say," Igor murmured, with tears in his eyes. Claudia, still full of anger, replied. "You've lost all chances, Igor. Go back to your life of frivolities. We're no longer your responsibility." Defeated and ashamed, Igor left the house. He walked to his car, feeling the weight of the world on his shoulders. The choices he had made, driven by vanity and desire, led him to lose everything that truly mattered. He drove back to his apartment, each mile increasing his sense of emptiness and regret. Claudia's words and Clara's wounded look echoed in his mind, reminding him that his actions had painful consequences, not just for him, but for those who once loved him unconditionally. Arriving home, Igor collapsed on the couch, feeling more alone than ever. Tears streamed down his face as he reflected on his choices and the path he had taken, a path now filled with errors and regrets. The life he had once desired now seemed empty and meaningless, and he couldn't help but think about what could have been if he had made different choices. Igor knew he needed to do something to try to fix the past. He called Claudia, but she initially refused. He persisted, saying it was important. "Claudia, please, we need to talk just once." "I beg you," Igor said, his voice choked. Claudia, reluctant, finally agreed. "Fine. I get off work at 6. Pick me up there," she replied, with a cutting coldness. At 6 o'clock, Igor was waiting in the car outside Claudia's workplace. When she came out, he felt the tension in the air. Igor tried to find the right words. "Claudia, I wanted to apologize for everything. I was shallow and deeply regret everything I did," Igor said, glancing at her briefly before returning his attention to the road. Claudia remained silent, gazing out the window. I realize now that when I regained my sight, it was the moment I stopped seeing what really matters. You were right all along. I lost my way and hurt the people I loved the most. Claudia still didn't respond. Growing increasingly desperate, Igor swallowed hard and asked the question he feared. Could you give me a second chance? To be a couple again like before? At that moment, Claudia let out a bitter laugh, full of anger. After everything you've put me through, do you think we can even be friends? She replied, her voice sharp. Igor felt a mix of anger and sadness. Claudia, please, I know I've made mistakes, but I'm trying to fix things, he said, almost begging. Claudia's anger and hurt were palpable. In the heat of the moment, Igor, whose vision was already deteriorating, didn't realize the car was veering off the road. Suddenly, the car flipped several times before coming to a stop upside down. Igor emerged almost unscathed, but Claudia was trapped in the wreckage. A passing car stopped, and the driver called the fire department. Claudia was rushed to the hospital in critical condition. At the hospital, when Clara learned of the accident, her rage exploded. You destroy everything you touch. Stay out of our lives, Igor. Clara shouted, tears of hatred streaming down her face. That was the final straw for Igor. He returned home feeling more lost and isolated than ever. Days later, he learned that Claudia was out of danger. He received his severance payment from the company and soon made a will, determined to leave something good behind. Igor went to the hospital, saw Fabio and Clara by Claudia's side, who looked much better. The three of them were smiling and happy, not noticing his presence. Igor felt a pang of pain and resignation. Quietly, he left the hospital and drove to the beach. His vision was worsening rapidly, and he wanted to see the sea one last time. Sitting on the sand, he watched the waves breaking on the shore. The sound of the sea brought a temporary peace, but also a deep sadness. He realized that his time was running out and that most of his choices had led to pain and regret. With the little vision he still had, Igor walked to the edge of a forest. Feeling the weight of hopelessness and regret, he threw his phone on the ground. He entered the forest, determined to disappear, and walked until he lost all strength. Igor didn't know how many days had passed, lying on the forest floor without food or water. His vision finally disappeared, leaving him blind once more. Standing there, he reflected on the life he had with Claudia and Clara. He realized, too late, that he had been happy and hadn't known it. As he pondered his life, he heard footsteps nearby. He thought it was an animal, believing his end was near. However, he heard a familiar voice calling him. Dad! Clara shouted, running towards him, her voice filled with worry. Igor, surprised and emotional, asked. Clara, how did you find me? Clara, holding Igor's phone, replied. I've always been good at hide and seek, remember? She said, trying to keep her voice steady. What Igor didn't know was that she had tracked him through the GPS on his phone. Clara continued. Dad, I know why you went into the forest, but you can't end your life. You need to make amends with Mom, with me, and with Fabio. Besides, I love you and don't want to lose you, Clara said, tears in her eyes. Igor, touched by his daughter's words, began to cry. For the first time in many years, he felt genuine happiness upon realizing that there was still a chance to make amends. Years passed. Igor lived alone, but Clara visited him frequently. She managed to forgive her father, building a new relationship based on understanding and love. Claudia, on the other hand, couldn't get as close to him. The past still weighed on her, and trust was not fully restored. Igor decided to donate all his severance money to Claudia, feeling she deserved it for all the years of care for Clara and the time they spent together. Fabio and Claudia accepted the money with gratitude, but made it clear that it didn't change the past. Thank you, Igor. This will help a lot, but you know money doesn't erase mistakes, Fabio said, looking at him seriously. Igor nodded, knowing Fabio was right. Over time, Igor found another job, working with dedication and humility. He sought to redeem himself for his past mistakes. Despite the challenges, he found a new form of happiness, knowing he had the chance to have his daughter by his side. And if you liked this video, subscribe to the channel, like, comment, and share this story.